Bob Engstrom is president of Robert Engstrom Companies, a residential community developer currently concentrating on the Wildflower residential community with 60 acres devoted to pollinator-friendly native habitat. Bob's activities include advocating for Fields of St. Croix, Minnesota's first conservation community. And it wasn't mentioned in my introduction, but I actually live at an intentional community, a Wiscoy land co-op in southeast Minnesota. We have 360 acres, been going for 40 years, devoted to conservation and organic land management. So there might be some other conservation communities going on in Minnesota as well. But Bob's current projects include advocacy of native habitat restoration and healthy communities in the metropolitan area. He's a trustee of the Urban Land Institute and Sensible Land Use Coalition. Jake Janski is project manager for Minnesota Native Landscapes and often works alongside Bob for the installation of naturalized habitats that feature biologically diverse and ecological sound designs. So take it away, Bob and Jake. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Well, it's great to see such a good turnout. I understand a turn-away crowd here this morning. And I got to tell you that after following Sarah, how would you like to follow Sarah with a speech? But she reminded me of a long time ago, I had to follow Hubert Humphrey at a speech at the National Architects Convention. And for you younger people, Hubert Humphrey would wave his arms and talk very fast and so on and so forth. Anyway, I talked to the, okay? I talked to the audience and saying that I usually start out with a story to develop some empathy with the crowd. And in this case, I needed sympathy. So that's what it's like to follow Sarah with her presentation. But I do have a story, though, because when she was talking about her beekeeping and bees and so on, a couple of weeks ago, our leader at our adult class at church told about this beekeeper down in Florida who had a very nice estate. And one day he went out to check to see how his pond was doing. And it just so happened that there were a whole bunch of young ladies that were skinny dipping in his pond, which they threw up their hands and went to the other side and buried themselves in the water with only their heads up. And at which time the beekeeper said, "Don't worry, ladies, I just came down here to feed the alligators." Well, anyway, today, there we go. Today I would like to tell you about a presentation that I made to the Regional Council Mayors of the Urban Land Institute. Talk a little bit about our development at Wildflower at Lake Elmo and the development process, and then end up with, I hope, with some take-home value, but I didn't realize the crowd was going to be quite as sophisticated as this. But I think between Jake and I, we can have some take-home value and a discussion of some native plants. And to start out, how long do you think it would take for me to get this photo of 3 butterflies on 1 echinacea? And I did take this one. I didn't crib it from Sarah's bouquet shots or anything like that. So anyway, it was quite a shot. Now, when I presented then to the Urban Land Institute Regional Council Mayors, this is the mayors that meet once a month. And it was there that I thought we could have a lot of impact because it starts at the top at the local level. And in the course of doing that, a bunch of like-minded ULI members and myself put together a little program for them, and this first part is what that was all about. We told them about the publicity that was being generated in the metro area, and that it was a timely topic, and this thing is very sensitive. It was a timely topic, and I mentioned, of course, the declining bee population, the monarch decline, and talked about the food supply and a few of the crops that were being pollinated. Again, and talked somewhat about the economics. You heard some economics from Jim earlier this morning. And then talking about the mayors being in a position to work with their staff and so on, so that we could all work together to make an impact. So what I talked to them then specifically about was a 3-point program. The 3-point program was to, first of all, identify underutilized land and convert into native habitat. And at an appropriate time, I'm going to ask Jake Janski to take the mic out there and maybe ask a few people here to think of some areas of native habitat that could be converted from public facilities and city-owned property, especially. That 3-point program also included integrating native habitat into the public approval process. Now, for those who are not a developer like me, you don't have to sit at city council meetings till 12 o'clock at night, but here's what you can do, however, is consider the planning process. Everybody can do that, because what happens is that you submit a plan to a city, and the planner, the community development director, and engineers and so on process the plan. But I can guarantee you just about every engineering firm that prepares a plan will include a highway mix for the restoration land that is disturbed in the process, in the development process. So early on, you could easily intercept anybody's plan by suggesting to the planner and the community development director, why not include a pollinator type of seed mix in that approval process. And in addition to that, the possibility of including some native plants in that approval process, because everybody has to submit a landscape plan as part of their development. So therefore, instead of just the ordinary tree stamp, to have native plants and trees as part of that plan is a way to intercept the process at a very early stage. Then the third thing we talked about was public participation by individuals. I also tried to refrain from getting involved with a lot of other complicated topics as part of this presentation, other than to mention that the cities should refrain from using chemicals on their public properties. Now, here are some examples then of underutilized land. Medians in highways. Jake, here's a chance for you to talk a little bit about utility corridors and right-of-ways.
In terms of underutilized land, utility corridors and rights-of-way are a great example of a lot of property and land out there that is currently being maintained by utility companies, pipeline companies, all of which are generally preferred to be free of woody vegetation. So herbaceous plant communities are preferable in those situations. And creating habitat in those situations is a very dual purpose. Drainage areas are another good piece of land to utilize. They form a really important function in terms of erosion control, keeping sediment and nutrients out of our waterways, but they can also be restored in a way that they're very diverse. They function as pollinator habitat as well. So there's really dual purpose in a lot of these areas, and everyone's needs are met, including in a very highly visible residential setting where aesthetics is also important. It's a win-win-win for everyone in these situations.
And as I mentioned before, there are lots of other people that are part of the movement, and Bowser, the Board of Water Resources, requires pollinator seed mixes as part of the Wetland Bank program and other programs that they have. Public facilities, just about every entity, municipality has got some land that they own that could easily be converted into native habitat. Now, I talked before a little bit about the integrating this into the public approval process. So now I'll talk about our development a little bit at the city of Lake Elmo, where we have 120 acres, and about half of it is going to be in parks and open space and right-of-ways and so on. But what we did is convert a lot of this land from farmland into native habitat, and this immediately adjoins the fields of St. Croix, which is right over here, which has about 60% of their land in permanent open space, and it immediately adjoins a prairie that I still own right here. So in this area, everything that you see in yellow is going to be permanent open space, seeded with a variety of mixes that we can talk about a little bit later. This area that you see are pathways, and the pathways are in. So if you'd like to come and join us, there's an easy access. The site is under construction, but there's an easy access down here on Lake Elmo Avenue where you can get on the pathway and work your way through this area, and it's going to be even more of a delight when Jake gets done planting this spring. But of course, if you're a developer, one of the problems you always have is that, as you know, it takes about 3 years for prairies to get established. So what we did many years ago, 20-some years ago, when prairie plantings were relatively new, is we bought larger plants in order to give people a sample of what they were looking at. But now times have changed, and I don't think we have to do that anymore, because a lot of people have seen a lot of native plants on a regular basis. Okay, the third thing we talked about was the individual homeowner, and there is a great potential as well. And examples that you might see where they have a practical application would be on steep slopes.
Yeah, we experience, or we come across a lot of individuals who, have a very interesting topographic yard. And a lot of these areas just aren't easy to mow, they're not safe to mow. They're great opportunities to convert areas of your own smaller property to great habitat. It's not about acreage here, it's just about diversity and the right plants. I guess taking that same concept to a little broader level is eliminating your entire lawn, which works for some people in some areas. Obviously, it doesn't work for everybody everywhere, but it's a great alternative to mowed, weed-free lawns. I hope I'm preaching to the choir on that one, but it's definitely an option. And then taking that a step further in incorporating those same native plants on a smaller scale, but in your formal landscaping. You don't need, believe it or not, you don't need hostas and daylilies to survive. I know it's hard to believe. They're great deer food. I mean, I love them because they keep the deer away from my native plants. But incorporating native plants in very formal settings is a very viable option to get more just habitat in your own yards.
So how many people here have read this book? Wow. Did you see the chart that compared the oak trees with a ginkgo. Okay, when I presented this to the mayors, this was the one statistic that really got their attention, that an oak tree has got 534 compatible species, a ginkgo tree, which comes from the Orient, 3. Yet Minneapolis and St. Paul have been planting ginkgo trees for quite some time, and I had the mayors of both cities in the audience, so maybe there's an impact, I don't know. Now, I suppose somebody's going to ask, what's the next best thing to an oak tree? Anybody remember from their reading, the chart? The black cherry tree is the next, if I remember right, and then the willow, and then the birch, aspen, and so on down the road. This of course, illustrates the point that I just made. Now, I want to talk a little bit how we go about it in the development process. In this case, we had a lot of land to be converted into habitat, and most of it was farmland. And what we did is try to come up with some different seed mixes for different applications. And maybe we could start, but sorry. And Sarah, I know why you had a little problem.
Hey, there we go.
Okay. We can start by talking about, in this area right down here, this is State Highway number 5. So I've always been an advocate in the planning process of trying to preserve the view sheds along a thoroughfare road. But in this case, it also has the side benefit that if you can protect the neighborhood from the outside noise, so much the better. So we put a large berm in this area that effectively takes care of the noise, and that was planted with one type of mix. And then in this area we have a stormwater retention area, and then this is a infiltration basin. So Jake, do you remember what we put in those?
We put a lot of species in those. You know, and this is one of the beauties of working with a developer like Bob. He wants to look at every area as an individual location and figure out the best species combinations to put in each. You know, along the berm, to kind of accentuate what he was trying to do with the raised berm, it's a great place to put tall grass species that are going to, you know, raise the height of the berm naturally, make it look like you know, more of a natural hillside with big blue stem and switchgrass and some of those typical tall grass species. As you get closer down to the water's edge, down to the shoreline, you know, we do a nice shoreline mix. You usually get a lot more floral diversity. A lot of wildflowers really thrive in those wetter conditions. So we were able to adapt our mixes to each of the little micro ecosystems in this development. And really try to enhance the diversity of doing so, because we had a lot to work with. It wasn't just one flat, dry field where you have to use one mix basically to accomplish your goals. Here we're able to use 3 different mixes in, no, actually 4 different mixes in, what is that, about 4 acres.
Well now, Jake, if I remember right, in this area over here next to the county road, when we got an amendment to our ordinance, our application, by saying we had to put a pathway in here and seed this area, which of course, according to our standard plans, would have been just that, a highway mix. And if I remember right, Jake, you said, well, don't spend too much money on seed in this area because...
Well, because right-of-ways are notorious for disturbance, and native plantings are notoriously unsuited for the type of disturbance humans tend to do. You know, I'm all about, you know, putting native plants in, getting as much diversity as you can, but there's also situations where there's more economical species to use, more aggressive species that might not fit so well, like right in someone's backyard, but in these ditches, it's a great place to put some of those types of species. And just as an example, about 2 months after it was seeded, I went back out there. Sure enough, fresh grade right down the middle of it, all gone. I don't know if they put new pipe in or new wiring. It's all destroyed. Got to do it over. So that's a consideration. What is the area going to be used for? Invest your time, money, effort in the areas you're going to be able to maintain as a native plant community for a long time. Some of these almost temporary areas, adapt, adjust. Still use native plants, but there's definitely applications for those areas.
I wanted to give you a little bit of the setting. This is the old village of Lake Elmo right here. So we're within walking distance of the village, of the library, and Lake Elmo Inn, and the elementary school is right over here, and so on. So it lends itself to a little more formal type of development, but basically what we have is a road coming in here, then we have a divided median, and that divided median will be planted with mostly native plants, just like we described previously, and we also look at these islands and other pockets for native plants as well. Just for the sake of people understanding what's going on here, there's 145 lots, of which most of them are in the larger lots here, but then there's 67 lots that are smaller lots, and that's part of a new trend, I think, that is happening in the development process, is that smaller lots with maintenance-free exteriors is kind of a sign of the aging population. But so we have lots that are basically like 55, 60 by about 115. But what is different is that there aren't garages coming in lined up and down the street. The street has got the same Main Street look that you might find in any of the suburbs like we're in right now. But what is different then is that there's a Main Street look. The garages come in from the back, but there's a park in the center of the block. And where I got that idea was that years back, we redeveloped that and developed that area from W.A. Frost Restaurant to the Cathedral over in St. Paul, from Selby to Summit. And the Historic Society and the city didn't want garages coming in from the street on that historic area. So we agreed to bring around the back. But what was different in this area is that instead of a rectangular block like you find in a typical city, these were square blocks. And with the square blocks, we ended up with this extra space in the center of the block. And I can tell you, after all these years, the people love it. So therefore, what we did is recreated then that historic type of park in the center of the block, and that is planted in a variety. That will be planted in a variety of trees, shrubs, and native plants. Well, we talked a little bit about seed mixes. Do you have anything more to say on that, Jake?
I guess, as we all know, diversity is the key. Don't try to outsmart nature. Not like we're actually able to do that, but give nature a lot of options and let it choose what's best where. We can narrow the range down, but good diverse seed mixes, lots of species, lots of bloom times for pollinators. Just hit all the marks when you're really making these plans. Okay, so we've covered two of the three things I said we'd talk about. I forgot to give you the punchline as far as the mayor's presentation is concerned. After the regional council mayor's presentation at the ULI meeting, we passed around a sheet, and every single mayor that was there signed up for further information, and we have a pollinator post that goes out once in a while. The timing was right to be able to advertise this meeting on the pollinator post, and anybody who's got suggestions that they want advertised, let me know. But the mayors were behind it, so therefore, if you have trouble with the public works folks, you know that there's some support at the top. And
I might also mention that Sarah did provide some handouts that helped with the presentation. Sarah from the Xerxes Society, that is. Oh. Now, here's the fun part it's going to be. I know that everybody here is fairly well up in the curve, but you probably get people asking you questions all the time about different plants and so on. So I thought, here are some examples of questions or plants that people ask me questions about, and I think I know the answer, but I thought I'd let Jake give the answer. In this case, does everybody know what this plant right here is? Hoary vervain, yes, very good. But now, does everybody know the difference between hoary vervain and blue vervain? Some people do, especially the people right up here in front. I can see. Jake.
Well, I guess on its most basic levels, they're two very closely related species that live in two very different habitats. You know, hoary vervain is much more of an upland, dry soil species. Sorry, is this better? Okay. Upland species, thrives in prairie habitats. Blue vervain definitely would be more of a wetland species on those shoreline edges, infiltration basins, that kind of thing. Both very, very beneficial to pollinators, and I'm saying that purely out of observation of being out in the field and being swarmed by bugs, I guess in the good way. But both of these are very, very beneficial.
Black chokeberry.
I guess just to touch on this plant a little bit, it's kind of one of my personal favorites, and not to be confused with choke cherry, which a lot of times people think that's what I'm talking about, and they think I'm nuts. Like, why would I plant that in my yard? Black chokeberry, it's one of those really good native shrubs. It fits really well into your urban landscape. Definitely a good yard shrub. Early flower, or early season blooms, which is great. A lot of your native prairie plants aren't very early season blooming, so to provide some pollen nectar, chokeberry is very beneficial in that respect. Also, it has fantastic fall color and really good big blackberries in the winter that actually makes pretty good jam. So very versatile, very useful, and good for the pollinators. Does anyone know what this is?
Now, what is this? How many people know what this is?
Hey, we got some.
A couple, three people.
Yep. This is just an example of one of those plants that 10 years ago, at least from my perspective, everyone was calling a weed, and it's just this ground cover, kind of in your shady spots. It's what you wanted to get rid of to plant trillium or something. You know, in recent, observations, as people are becoming more aware, myself included, this is a fantastic ground cover for shady areas. Great, obviously, good for honeybees, pollinators, nice flowers, and it kind of fills that spot in your yard where you maybe have trouble getting things to grow. It definitely fills that little niche. It's Virginia waterleaf. Sorry, Virginia waterleaf. Sorry, you probably couldn't hear them yell it out up here. And this, just as an example, I can't explain it, maybe Sarah can, but this is in a small yard in the middle of St. Paul, and I don't know of any beehives around it. This is a relative's house that I took this picture, and there's a honeybee in the middle. So for whatever about it appeals to them, it clearly is a big draw.
Okay, I put this slide in as a reminder to mention that a couple of weeks ago at the Wild Ones Design with Nature conference, the speaker there advocated many times just cutting down the stalks and letting them be as mulch rather than always cleaning everything up and leaving it nice and neat. So this is a reminder that don't be too neat with cleaning up your mulch. Now, sneezeweed, that's a name that gets everybody's attention. Jake, where did that name come from?
Well, honestly, before Bob asked me that direct question, my assumption is that it blooms at the same time as ragweed, so people with allergies were just allergic to it. And then, of course, I went online and found the real answer. Well, okay, or at least one real answer. I did not do a thorough study. But apparently the dried leaves were sniffed or something, and to create a sneeze that would dispel the evil spirits from your body. So there's that. I don't personally vouch for that explanation. It's just what I found.
Helenium autumnal. I must tell you, on one of our personal prairies, last year I went down around what was a stormwater collection area, and there were some trees and so on. I hadn't been there for years, and I came upon this unbelievable grove of sneezeweed. It's a beautiful sight. It likes moisture, and I would guess that it's been able to stand intermittent moisture because it's right on the edge of a stormwater collection area. Elderberry.
I guess elderberry as one example of our native shrubs that, again, they're, I think, really underappreciated, especially in the woodland settings. People like the visual of like more of a savanna, open woodland. You know, the native shrubs are really important to filling that, again, that early season time void for native pollinators. Before the native prairie plants really get going, a lot of the woodland species are blooming. Elderberry is a great example. Big, you know, very floral, big flowers. A lot of these species, though, in order to bloom, need more filtered light. So in your dense shade, your, you know, buckthorn understory areas, you got to give them some wiggle room, a little breathing room, some sunlight, and they really can produce really beneficial habitat.
Now this next slide is a trick. Jake, go over to Sarah's place, will you?
What? Oh.
This next one is a trick. I want to know why they say that only 1 out of 10 monarch butterflies make it from this stage. And I knew that she was going to be in the audience, so Sarah, do you know the answer?
I think she left. See, she knew you were going to.
Where is she?
Was she hiding?
Oh, I'm sorry. She's hiding. She knew the question was coming. Sarah, the question was, they say that 1 out of 10 monarchs don't make it from this stage to become a full-fledged monarch butterfly. So can you tell us why that happens and what we can do about it?
I'm guessing it's a shortage of food, and then there's also parasitoid insects that will lay their eggs in monarchs. Yeah, I'm not sure what we can do about that beyond, you know, planting as much milkweed as we can.
Well, that's good, because that was pretty much my answer, too. So that's good. I feel better about that.
Now, just about everybody loves to show a picture of their grandchild or their children, right? So here's my grandchild, my 3rd grader down in Charlotte, North Carolina, where my son is the general manager of the Charlotte Independence professional soccer team. And last year, the 2nd graders had a monarch garden, and this last year they had this sculptural bee hotel, and when you see that, you can become inspired to do just about anything. So my son, Paul, who's quite handy, gave me this smaller bee hotel for Christmas. Now, the question again is, for you experts, because this is what everybody asks me, is that this is cup plant right here. This is cup plant, and this is swamp milkweed. Now, do you leave the stems the way they are, or do you stick a wire in there and open up the cavity? I would welcome an expert on that. Anybody? Both? Anybody got an opinion? Even if they don't know the answer? Yes.
I've never heard of, I've read a little bit about it, but I've never heard of anybody sticking wires in there to make the hole. I think just leave it like it is.
Chip.
And some stems are more hollow than others, you know, they don't have, this is not totally enclosing in the stem. So, and there's a bee that doesn't like drilling out the pith, you know, they'll use that type of stem.
The lady says leave them the way they are. We're wrapping up here. Those of you who have an idea about some underutilized land in your community, raise your hand and Jake will come out and collect that example. In the meantime, go ahead, Jake.
I do have a couple questions on the cards.
Oh, yes.
You want to go through those
Yeah.
first? I'll let you think about these. First question is sweet clover. Love it or hate it? Yes, I do. No. Highly desired by honeybees, etc., but hard on fragile prairie ecosystems. I could address that from a land management perspective, and I completely agree with everything that's said on this card. It's really great for honeybees. My advice is to let it flower and then try to cut it before it goes to seed, because a couple of them are fantastic, acres and acres and acres of them, not diverse, you know, blooming at one time of the year. That's not the right habitat. As an individual species, though, it's hard to deny how great they are. You anything to add to that?
That's fine.
All right. I do have one more question about using medians as underutilized land, and having heard that we shouldn't encourage putting pollinator habitat near traffic. I guess my personal thoughts on that are there's better places on, you know, slow meandering roads. In Bob's development with the medians going right through the little neighborhoods where people are hopefully driving slower, a little more cautiously, areas with wider shoulders. But there is definitely a risk of impacting them with your car. I drive all over the state all year round looking at land, and I impact pollinators once in a while. I'm not proud of it, but it happens. And yeah, I think there's definitely the right application for that.
Here's a very thoughtful question about Excel's responsibility. Excel says that it will mow their corridors, but when do they mow? I'm assuming the question is that if you plant a native prairie, when do they mow?
Well, in terms of vegetation management for Excel, I'm guessing they mow whenever they can. Probably in the winter, if they're, you know, those companies are primarily doing woody species control, and especially since their right-of-ways can go through wetlands and all sorts of habitat. I presume they do most of that kind of maintenance in the winter. If they're doing spraying on those, you know, for noxious weeds and such, their timing's probably, you know, the same time anyone can control noxious weeds, you know, summer and such. Not sure if that answered the question.
From my personal standpoint, I would think it requires more of a corporate commitment to say, yes, we are going to do it and we're going to maintain, perhaps in conjunction with the local community, but as you know, it costs money to prepare the prairie, install it, and so on. And then the maintenance, including mowing and burning, is something that needs to be followed up as well. Now, okay. Do we have any other examples of underutilized land or questions? Yes, ma'am. Jake.
So it's hard to educate homeowners.
I'll repeat the question.
They have a nice house and they don't want this wild look. Do you recommend any plants that a meter cleaner type of look?
So the question is, how do you educate homeowners?
I was going to say the question is, how do you educate homeowners for plants that are a little bit more attractive for their neighbors? I would say this from a prairie standpoint. What I learned 20 years ago is that if you provide a neat edge, then a lot of people kind of understand that something is going on there and somebody's in control. Mm-hmm. If it spills out over onto the sidewalk and the street and so on, they think that maybe you've gone south for the winter or something.
My
Go
only
ahead.
point to that is there's definitely species that are less aggressive, they spread less vigorously, they're less what I call floppy. They get really tall and then kind of fall over, which in the middle of 40 acres is cool, in the middle of 40 square feet isn't. So really being careful about plant selection, but there are grasses, there are wildflowers, there are sedges, bushes, all of that. There are certain species that will do very well in those environments. It just takes a little bit of research to figure those out. We're about to get the hook here.
No, can you take your mic over to this lady? We got 2 minutes. We got 2 minutes according to the official lady here.
I'm just wondering about ways to prepare the ground for planting. Are there options? Do you have to get rid of everything, or can you do it other ways?
Well, here's an hour conversation. A lot of it depends on the scale of your site. A lot of it depends on what you're starting with. You know, there's okay, that's 1 minute and not 1 hour, right? Okay. You know, it's really site specific. There's a lot of cultural, mechanical ways that you can prep a site on a small scale that is practical. When you're dealing with 40 acres, there's a lot more broad scale methods that you have to look into. Beyond getting into it any more than that, I think I'll just leave it as is.
Just to provide some balance between bees and butterflies, I just wanted to mention that this, of course, is everybody's favorite plant, meadow blazing star, and I can guarantee you a cluster of blazing
Monarchs.
meadow star, excuse me, meadow blazing star will attract monarch butterflies in the fall. I stood out in one of our prairies last fall, and without moving, saw at least 3 dozen monarchs because we had a lot of the meadow blazing star scattered around. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.